It is a message to the US, to US allies in the region that, hey, China is an advanced military capability and China is able to act on its strategic requirements through its military, and it better be taken seriously.
This message wasn't delivered through diplomatic channel. It was staged live in Tiananmen Square, with the roar of jet engines, the clatter of tank tracks, and the thunderous march of more than 10,000 soldiers. The military parade in Beijing was not just a commemoration, it was a global product launch, a ruthless marketing campaign, and the clearest indictment yet of America's foreign and economic policy failures, as CNN sharply observed. Today, Xi Jinping showcased China's staggering military power, rallying some of the world's most powerful autocrats behind his vision for a new world order, even as US President Donald Trump launches a global trade war and reshapes America's alliances. This is the raw truth behind Beijing's ambition, a plan transforming China from a weapons customer into a formidable global supplier. Newly unveiled weapons, including this intercontinental ballistic missile, over 100 aircraft, and more than 10,000 troops, turned Beijing's Grand Parade into a declaration of intent. It marked President Xi Jinping's ambition to transform China from one of the world's biggest arms importers into a producer of every weapon it needs, and a formidable exporter aiming for $3.2 billion in sales across dozens of countries. Experts at Rand Corporation emphasize that the figure isn't about profit margins, it's a carefully calculated macroeconomic tool to build a global network of influence, operating entirely outside the dollar-dominated system. While America's defense industry relies on lucrative contracts with wealthy allies, China is targeting a neglected market, the Global South. Chinese arms attract buyers in developing nations for several reasons. They are cheaper, often not the most cutting edge, but financially accessible. Small arms, bayonets, and mass-producible light systems suited for real-world conflicts across the Global South. Beyond that, China offers a full spectrum of products, from drones to missile systems to military helicopters, imposing fewer restrictions on use compared to Western arms. Flexible payment options further sweeten the deal. By exporting weapons, China is not just making sales, it is building client states, expanding influence, and creating strategic leverage in regions like South Asia, Africa, and Latin America. This is a direct economic strike at America's system. Washington usually attaches strict political conditions, human rights requirements, and end-use regulations to its arms sales, barriers that many nations find insurmountable. China has stripped those barriers away, turning weapons into products unbound by ideology. Beijing accepts payment methods that the US arms industry cannot or will not touch, directly challenging the dollar's hegemony. Instead of demanding settlements in US currency, China is willing to take what's more tangible and practical: commodities, raw materials, infrastructure deals, or local currency swaps. In doing so, Beijing isn't just selling weapons, it's rewriting the rules of the global arms trade and undermining the financial leverage Washington has relied on for decades. Every arms for resources deal is a body blow to the petrodollar system, the foundation of America's economic power for decades. It means the world's most critical resources are being traded without a single US dollar. The consequences for ordinary Americans are stark. The dollar's value erodes, inflation rises, and the nation's economic standing shakes at its core. Meanwhile, US defense companies lose lucrative contracts, threatening jobs for American workers. What makes this strategy even more insidious is that it goes far beyond short-term economic gains. The real objective is to build long-term dependency, a form of 21st century economic colonialism where nations tied to Chinese weapons and trade systems find their sovereignty increasingly subordinated to Beijing's strategic will.
The driver for China in exports is not the funds, it's the influence that it can gauge in the emerging markets through the exports. When China exports helicopters to Cambodia through the provision of soft loans, China does not do that because it needs the money. China does that because it can gain a strategic and diplomatic influence in the country through which it can exercise its power.
When a country buys Chinese weapons, it isn't just purchasing hardware. It's buying into an entire ecosystem of spare parts, maintenance, and training, forging a dependency that can last for decades. Each sale locks nations into a long-term relationship with Beijing's defense industry, ensuring political and economic leverage far beyond the battlefield. As NBC News has pointed out, this is how a new alliance is taking shape in practice, through networks of military dependence, drawing more nations into China's orbit and mounting a direct challenge to the West. Xi Jinping was joined on Wednesday by leaders from Russia, North Korea, and Iran in what many have called an axis of instability, a show of unity against the West. Each of them plays a central role in Russian President Vladimir Putin's war in Ukraine, which shows no sign of ending despite President Donald Trump's efforts at peace. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has supplied Moscow with both troops and weapons, while U.S. officials say Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian has provided drones. Though Xi has tried to project neutrality in the conflict, he has in practice given Russia a vital diplomatic and economic lifeline. This means that resources, technology, and manpower are being mobilized against America's interests. While the U.S. steadily loses allies, China is quietly constructing an alliance grounded in cold, transactional economics, a network of dependencies that trades loyalty not for ideals but for hard assets and pragmatic deals. The West, long dismissive of Chinese technology as mere imitation, was hit with a cold shock. The parade unveiled a suite of high-tech weapons, from hypersonic missiles to electronic warfare systems, the fruit of a deliberate national strategy aimed at achieving full military technology self-sufficiency. At the core of this rise is a single philosophy: self-reliance and resilience. It reflects an ironclad determination never again to depend on any other nation for China's security and power.
Self-reliance is a fundamental part of what China does in terms of military technological development. It needs to be able to supply equipment and capability very quickly to the Chinese military, and if it relies on a foreign country to do that, then the ability of the PLA to respond to any contingency effectively and efficiently and quickly is compromised.
Massive, concentrated investment in research and development is now producing results that the Pentagon finds deeply alarming. The weapons on display are not only on par with American systems, but in some areas may even surpass them. Anti-ship ballistic missiles like the DF-21D and DF-26, dubbed carrier killers, pose a direct challenge to the foundation of U.S. naval power in the Pacific. Swarms of autonomous drones, both airborne and underwater, can overwhelm even America's most advanced defenses at just a fraction of the cost. Battlefield reality and continuous innovation are closing this gap fast. The Associated Press has provided detailed breakdowns of these new weapons, underscoring the true scale of the threat. The parade featured a wide array of missiles capable of carrying nuclear warheads from the air, sea, and land. According to China's official Xinhua news agency, this was the first time the military's full strategic nuclear triad was presented in a concentrated display, described as China's strategic trump card to safeguard national sovereignty and national dignity. Among the nuclear-capable missiles on display was the DF-61, a new intercontinental ballistic missile that can be launched from a mobile platform. China also unveiled the latest silo-based variant of the DF-5, the DF-5C, with an estimated range of 20,000 kilometers. In addition, the parade showcased the air-launched JL-1 and the sea-launched JL-3, both of which are nuclear-capable. Economic analysts stress that China is advancing far faster than the United States in key military technologies. Malcolm Davis, a senior analyst at the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, put it bluntly: they are gaining an edge that will make it much harder for the U.S. and its allies to project power into the Western Pacific in a crisis. The long-held assumption that Chinese arms exports are of inferior quality is rapidly becoming obsolete.
We still don't know really what happened, and so I take that with a pinch of salt. But what I would say is that as Chinese defense equipment has continued to increase in quality over the last 20 years, the quality that it exports has also increased, even though it's not as strong as some of the Western counterparts.
For American taxpayers, this is a harsh truth. Trillions of dollars have been poured into costly, delayed, and often underperforming weapons programs like the F-35, while a competitor has managed to develop systems that are more effective at a fraction of the cost. Now, this means the technological edge that the U.S. military has relied on for decades is slipping away. Future American soldiers may face an enemy that is better equipped, larger in number, and able to replace its losses far more quickly. National security, once guaranteed by unmatched technological superiority, is now under serious threat. The parade was not just a showcase of weapons, it was a statement of stature. China was openly declaring itself a global power.
For China, this is a question of prestige. Over the last 6 years, China has made a lot of inroads in a lot of areas of military technology, and so this parade is an opportunity for China to demonstrate the growing power of its defense industry.
This confidence stands in stark contrast to the misguided predictions of Western analysts. For years, they assumed China could never become a leading arms exporter because of its limited customer base and persistent quality issues. Today, those assumptions look naive, and dangerously so.
We said at the time, okay, China's moved very quickly into a strong position. We're likely to see China move into the top 2 or 3 exporters. But we haven't seen that because the scope of China's defense export customers is quite limited.
That so-called limitation has become China's strategic strength. By targeting markets the U.S. ignores, Beijing has carved out an exclusive sphere of influence. For the first time, China unveiled a full nuclear triad deployable by land, sea, and air, including the retrofitted DF-5C intercontinental ballistic missile with a range of 20,000 kilometers and the new mobile long-range missile DF-61. The emergence of a new axis of power could not have been displayed more clearly, exactly as CNN observed. One of the day's most striking images was Xi Jinping walking toward the Tiananmen rostrum, flanked by Putin and Kim Jong-un, with other world leaders following behind. It was a clear declaration of solidarity among authoritarian leaders who share a vision of an alternative world order capable of standing against the U.S. and its Western partners. In that sense, the Beijing parade was a harsh wake-up call. It laid bare with ruthless clarity the price of American complacency, political division, and the absence of a long-term strategy. While the U.S. has been mired in domestic turmoil and costly military adventures, China has focused on building economic and technological strength. Now, it is wielding that power to reshape the world in its own image.